Every day, Donald Trump likes to show us that he is by far the most incompetent and inept president in American history. And sometimes he does it in new ways, but usually it's just kind of repeating the old material. And that is what we are seeing lately as Donald Trump continues to fall flat on his face with his tariff disaster, an absolute abomination of a plan that has only affected working Americans while Donald Trump hands out exemptions for $1 million checks to his rich friends. But clearly, it's not going all according to Trump's plan, because a new leak details how Donald Trump is attacking his own staff over these failures. We're going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting the work that we're doing on this channel. Now, before we get into that report, I want to start with a little bit of context on how poorly the tariff plan is going with Lawrence O'Donnell right here.
They brought back tariffs to see if they could save it. No objection to that from White House press corps. No objections at all. That just sailed right through, sailed right by them. Viewers of this program know that the Smoot-Hawley tariffs were written by the Republican chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee and the Republican chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, both of which committees have jurisdiction over tariffs, and they got the tariffs in effect by history named after themselves, Senator Reed Smoot and Congressman Willis Hawley. They were signed into law by Republican President Herbert Hoover in 1930, and they caused and accelerated profoundly the Great Depression. The tariffs came before the worst of the Great Depression, and they worsened the Great Depression, and they were done and put into law entirely by Republicans. And Joe Biden, on his sickest day in the presidency when he had COVID and he could barely speak, could never have said anything as utterly ignorant of history as that lunacy Donald Trump spoke to the White House press corps about tariffs coming after the Great Depression. But Donald Trump can do it, and the White House press corps says nothing because they apparently know nothing about the subject of tariffs or the Great Depression, and who knows what else. The shame of the White House press corps and the Trump campaign press corps is their disgraceful failure to be able to confront Donald Trump about his lies about who pays the Trump tariffs. That is the simplest lie Donald Trump tells about tariffs, which has become a huge subject in his presidency that no White House press reporter is apparently capable of understanding. And Donald Trump has never been confronted on that lie by the White House press corps. If an individual member of the White House press corps does understand all of this about tariffs and has been unfairly blocked by the Trump people or colleagues in the room from being able to ask that question, I hereby apologize to that unknown reporter for lumping that reporter in with the genuinely disgraceful job that the larger group has done in their complete failure to penetrate that very simple lie. But the public knows. The public knows much better than the White House press corps that Donald Trump is lying about who pays the tariffs. On this, the American public, much, much smarter than your average White House reporter. A new poll shows 81% of Americans are very concerned or somewhat concerned about the impact of tariffs on their personal finances.
Now, we played a little bit of that segment this morning when Lawrence was talking about how Donald Trump doesn't know anything going on in his administration, how Donald Trump is completely out of it, how this is a comically, Hollywood couldn't even come up with this level of stupidity in the White House. And that is true. But what's shocking is that they recognize it. I'm not surprised Donald Trump is a moron. I'm surprised he can see how bad things are for him. But clearly he can, because this report details just how upset about it he is. Taco Trump went off at aides as he was forced into embarrassing climb down. Donald Trump complained to his aides about the lack of progress being made on trade deals as he was debating whether to push back his tariff deadlines yet again, according to a report. The president announced on Monday he was imposing a new wave of 25 to 40% tariffs on products from more than a dozen countries, including key trading partners such as Japan and South Korea, unless those countries reach new trade deals with the U.S. by August 1st. A series of scary letters sent to world leaders pushed back a July 9th deadline that Trump had previously set for countries whose products were hit by the most aggressive Liberation Day tariffs announced in April. Trump was tempted to let the tariffs take effect, but he spent the weekend on the phone with aides and allies who argued he should set a new deadline, the Wall Street Journal reported. During the calls, he said he was frustrated the administration hadn't made progress on trade deals with other countries, the Journal reported. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said officials were making progress with India and the EU and could reach deals if they were given more time. Originally, the president had promised to liberate America from trade deficits by striking 90 deals in 90 days, but so far only 3 countries have announced partial trade framework with the U.S., the UK, China, and Vietnam are those countries. Trump blamed the other countries for failing to make offers that were good enough for the U.S., sources told the Journal. He also told aides that he was riding a wave of momentum from his big, beautiful budget bill, which is widely unpopular, and his strikes on Iran, whose effectiveness have been called into question. Trump said he wanted to keep up his supposed winning streak, with victories on trade policy, according to the Journal. The Daily Beast has reached out to the White House for comment. A White House spokesperson told the Journal that other countries were interested in lowering the tariff rates on their products, but the United States, the world's biggest and best consumer market, holds the cards, sure, and leverage, not true, in negotiation to unilaterally set deals with appropriate tariff rates for our trading partners. The tariffs are an import tax paid by American companies, with the cost primarily being passed on to consumers. The letter sent out Monday left observers scratching their heads after the typo-ridden messages failed to shed light on the administration's trade goals. If you wish to open your heretofore closed trading markets to the United States, eliminate your tariff and non-tariff policies and trade barriers. We will perhaps consider an adjustment to this letter, Trump wrote in near-identical notes to each leader. These tariffs may be modified upward or downward depending on our relationship with your country. Asked about the tariff deadline over the weekend, Trump himself seemed to have no idea what was going on. At least one MAGA insider has said the tariff deadlines and announcements are all theatrics, a claim that the White House has denied. Well, yes, they are all theatrics. This is just one big joke to Donald Trump. He just wants to appear strong. That's it. And that's why I find the letters so fascinating, because he keeps saying it like it's a strong, intimidating thing. We're going to send a letter. It is going to be a scary letter. But is he mailing it, though? That's what I don't like. Are they actually mailing the letters? Because there's a deadline in place, right? So, I don't know. UPS, there's a little delay there for international shipping. It's just such a joke. I don't even get it. Why can't he just say, I'm calling them? And, I'm gonna yell at them. He's just not a tough guy. He wants to be. But again, he only cares about this because it's embarrassing the bravado he claims he has. Other places, Donald Trump could care less if everything is falling apart. Just take a look at FEMA.
The reality is that Trump doesn't think natural disasters should be his problem at all. I mean, from the very first week of his new term, Trump has proposed getting rid of FEMA altogether, just eliminating it. Because in Trump's view, the federal government shouldn't have to deal with emergencies. That task should be left to the states. And as he sees it, the only role he should really play here is being the point person on whether states get anything from the federal government at all. He loves to have that power. Remember, this is what Trump said just last month, when asked whether he would let his personal views of California's Democratic governor get in the way of delivering wildfire relief.
Will your recent dust-ups with Governor Newsom impact additional wildfire relief out there? They've requested $40 billion.
The man's incompetent. Hatred is never a good thing in politics. When you don't like somebody, don't respect somebody, it's harder for that person to get money.
The idea of a president, any president, weaponizing FEMA like that, which is essentially weaponizing disaster relief that people in red states and blue states and purple states and people who aren't political at all depend on, all to punish political enemies, is obviously unbelievably alarming. It should alarm everybody, even people who voted for him. Unlike California, Texas is, of course, a red state with a Republican governor and plenty of Trump supporters. So if Trump was going to help any state, you'd think it would be a state like Texas. And he did sign a major disaster declaration within days of the flood. But what's unclear right now is how much help FEMA is capable of providing anymore, even when Trump wants to provide it. Because for months now, we have seen report after report of people inside FEMA warning that the agency hasn't been preparing for disasters the way it normally does. In fact, the agency has reportedly been losing employees at such an alarming rate rather than staffing up to prepare for disaster season, which is normally what they would be doing during this period of time. In Texas, where there are, again, at least 161 people unaccounted for, sources within FEMA told independent journalist Marissa Cabas that, quote, barely any staff members deployed. As one FEMA staffer put it, quote, we're doing a lot less than normal. And the acting FEMA administrator, David Richardson, is, quote, nowhere to be found. Now, this is important because recovery in a place like Texas is not 1 day or 4 days. It's weeks, it's months, it could be years in some places. That's why it's important. And given the relative silence from the head of FEMA, you might be wondering what his boss, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, oversees the department, is doing with her time right now. Is she stepping in? I think you know the answer. Well, yesterday, in the midst of this crisis, Kristi Noem was asking her followers on social media to vote for their favorite portrait of her to hang in the South Dakota state capitol, of course. And no, I am not in any way joking. I thought it was a joke when I first saw it, but it wasn't a joke. I mean, they could pick between what appears to be an oil painting of her in a cowboy hat on a horse, or her in a cowboy hat on a horse, or, for some variety, I suppose, her in a cowboy hat on a horse. So that's where her head is at.
My resident, that was the one that called 911, he was trying to get to the family and all the way to water, all the way to his waist, and debris hitting him, and he was yelling, please throw me your baby. And they couldn't, and they got swept away.
Donald Trump will claim he cares about the lives lost in Texas only as an excuse, only if it gets him out of talking about Jeffrey Epstein or his tariff failures or Ukraine. Donald Trump doesn't actually care. Let's be very, very clear about that. Donald Trump couldn't possibly care less. He couldn't. And so anyone saying that we shouldn't make this issue political, I say to them, the only political issue is the one that Donald Trump took with properly funding emergency response and crisis management and battling climate change. That's it. That was political. That was the political decision. Pointing that out is keeping people safe for the future. And we're going to continue to do that on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.